You are now listening to Shh, Your Ancestors Are Speaking.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. I am Smootyfox and I have my co-host here today, Lori. She specializes, well, if you want to give a brief introduction of yourself, please.
Sure, yeah. I'm Lori. I'm an astrologer, and I also do tarot and palm reading and movement practices and all kinds of everything. My specialty has kind of drifted and changed a lot throughout the years, and so astrology and helping people and really understanding the psyche and all of those things have always been really big pieces of my work and all of the work that we do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know we've been talking about doing this together since we've met, and our love of movies and horror movies and different things like that. And we particularly like Hill House because it's a part of a larger series that that kind of confronts different aspects of the human
experience.
Yes.
Yeah, there's something about Mike Flanagan's shows that I feel like each one really does a good job of like encapsulating like different themes. Like there's always this like overarching theme that you can find in all of his pieces of work, and it's really cool to see that. I feel like there's something about thrillers or like psychological horror that you don't really get that in any other genre. I mean, I only really exclusively watch horror because of that like deep psyche, you know, like there's so much analysis you can really do from it. It's so interesting to like pull that out. And so Hill House, I think it's his best show. I think all of them they're all up there.
Yes.
I really have nothing bad to say about any of them, but it might be because it's the first one. There's the nostalgia behind it, but there is something about Hill House. I've seen it like 8 or 9 times all the way through because it's so brilliantly done, and it's the kind of show that just every time you watch it and rewatch it, you find more and more that you can, you know, start peeling back the layers of the onion and
relate to and connect to. And I really like how in every one he reuses the same characters. But he reuses them in a different way.
In a very different context.
I love that. That's probably my favorite part. So we're going to give like a kind of summation of what Hill House was. You have the introduction of the house. And I believe it starts out with Steven. Well,
if you haven't seen it and don't mind spoilers, I guess.
That's right. We do have to add.
Right. Spoiler alert. But, it's about this family where the parents flipped houses, and for only a summer, I think they only lived there 2-3 months, they move into this giant haunted house that was last lived in by the Hills, and nobody had been in there for years, and so they move into this haunted house and they're trying to revamp it, but as the series goes on, you find more and more secrets and ghosts, and like all of this stuff gets bubbled up to the surface until ultimately the mother commits suicide in the house and they all run away. So then it does a really good job of flashing forward and backwards, showing how they are now when they're in their 30s, maybe early 40s, and then going backwards to showing how even just living in this house for 2 to 3 months like affected these kids for the rest of their lives, and how they all kind of grew up very differently with those experiences. And it really dives into how the older siblings remember a little bit more than the younger siblings, and because the twins were only
6. I think they were 6.
They were 6. And and so like, you know, they were too young to really know what was going on. But yeah.
Yeah, and I like the way that the mother talks about a house and how the house is there to protect them, and how the house has bones and veins, and I think that's something that I really, I really connected to, because I believe that every aspect of your house, like every part of your house, represents a certain part of self. And I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I really liked the way that the red room was something different for every single one of the like it was a playroom for the twins, and then it was a tree house for Luke.
For Luke.
Yep. And then it was a playhouse for Nell, and then it was a dance studio for Theo, and then it was a video game room for Steven. I forgot what it was for. Do you remember what it was for Shirley?
Oh man.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I know it was something different for her but then at the same time, they were in their mind trying to get into this one room. That was the one room that was not discovered.
Yeah. It was locked the whole time. And so, and something I like to think about a lot, from an astrology standpoint, I'm always relating the world back to how it can look in astrology, but Cancer is the sign that rules the home, and I think a lot about the crab shell, because that's where a lot of the significations come from, or the crab and having your shell on your back, and something about the way that the mother always talks about that home space, and how it's like big in the life force. And Cancer also, like in medical astrology, it rules the womb and the chest, and like
safety.
The pieces that need to be kept the safest, right? And or that can grow a baby, right? And the breasts, and like how you can feed the baby once the baby's born, and it's opposite to Capricorn, which rules bones and structure and like ligaments and hair and teeth, and it's just the connection between those two signs, and really like pulling that together. And so a little bit of a stretch, but also like it's so interesting to see the way that she talked about this home, because that's something I think about a lot with astrology, is like, how can you make your home be bones and structure and that safe space for you, like the crab shell. And crabs, they can carry their homes on their back. They can go anywhere they need to go. And so there's also this aspect of how this family was also so transient. Yeah. And it was all over the place throughout the series, too.
But also, if you remember, she was designing the forever home.
Yeah, their forever home.
Right? And I think that points to what you said, that the forever home was something that was just them. Yes. And then the daughter, Shirley, she made a little thing of her forever home, and had the mother's picture next to it, so it was almost in honor of that. But I think it goes to say that one of the lessons that can be learned from it is that home is what you make it, and it's really about being together and being in a place together, that is going to be the forever home.
And it's so interesting too how that like forever home was such a concept to them that they spoke about so much, but they couldn't afford this forever home until they bounced around and like fixed up, refurbished all of these like old haunted houses. And so it's kind of poetic too that they couldn't get to the forever home until they went through some really dark spaces and tried to fix them. And some things are unfixable. And they just kind of had to take a loss on that home.
Absolutely. But that is the reason why the father was so attached to selling this home. Even though there were so many weird things happening in the house, the children were telling him, hey, this is not a good house. The neighbors that took care of the home even said, hey, get your wife out of this house, because he had so much invested in the dream, the facade. And
the money behind it too. Like the physical physical, like they spent a lot of money to buy this house
Yes.
that they were going to then fix and sell for a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But that wasn't reality.
It wasn't reality, no.
Yeah.
No. Well, let's talk about the connection to the loss, the trauma, but also the supernatural aspect of it, right? I think that my favorite part is that as you see these ghosts introduce themselves, there are different aspects of the children that they interact with or the mother that they interact with, because the way the mother was kind of swayed was by the ghost and her fear of losing her children.
Right.
Right?
Right, yeah. And they, in a way, they all kind of saw ghosts that represented
A fear.
their fears and things that, even from their future, too.
Yes.
Like, and, you know, they all... Each of the children represented a stage of grief, which is what we're really talking about here, too.
Yes.
And so I really loved the way that the first 5 episodes were each assigned to one of the children in age order. And it moved down the line talking about their stage of grief that they represented, but also really dove deep into... what their fears were based off of that. So it was like a very real, very physical manifestation of what grief can actually look like and how it can play out for people, and how, you know, 5 siblings who grew up with the same parents, with the same experiences, with the same tools, resources, whatever, and went through the same one traumatic experience.
Yes.
Were then able to turn it around and grow up and experience their life so differently.
Yeah. So let's start with Stephen. We connect that to denial and his inability to really see the ghost, because from the kids' perspectives, he didn't even see half of the things that they saw. He had tried to convince them that they were crazy and that it was really mental illness.
Right. And I think there was also an aspect of he's the oldest, so he felt this almost like need to be the protector and the oldest of the siblings, and, you know, oh, look at my little sibling seeing things, or, you know, there was definitely that. But he's also the one who grows up and writes the book and basically exploits his siblings by putting them on blast and by sharing this story with the whole world, their trauma. And he played it off as if he never saw anything and never had the trauma, but made money off of the rest of their pain. And he never realized that he actually did see ghosts the whole time, and he experienced just the same thing that they all did, but he repressed it and he denied it, and he struggled through it, and just kind of got to a point where there was a lot of
well, you know,
misunderstanding.
I think that what was interesting, and I think this was like in the middle of the series, that the mother acknowledged that that she had a gift, and that the gift came down from the family line. And I think that that's why all of them also represented aspects of that same gift.
For sure.
And there is a part where Stephen is going to visit a woman who believes she sees her husband's death every night. And he goes in, he sleeps there. He says that she is making it up because, you know, where the intersection is, you know, and how there's a drop from the leak.
He uses reality, quote, reality to disprove things that he can't understand in the supernatural, the things that he, you know, if it doesn't have a scientific reason,
and he can't understand
it
or connect, but he still ends up telling her that he's going to use it in the book. So even though he doesn't believe, he still
doesn't mind exploiting people for their stories.
Yeah.
And because it's a money-making thing
It is
at
a
that
money-making
point.
thing.
And so, you know, and I think going back to that cancer reference, there's a security blanket behind it. That Cancer Capricorn, it's the mother and the father, right? Like, there's a security that he's seeking, and if you can use your trauma to make money or to be able to provide future security, then that's a whole other thing.
Yes.
Right? And so he kind of went that direction and offered all the siblings money so that it almost felt like hush money.
Yeah.
And they all kind of reacted differently to it as well. You know, like Theo took the money.
Yes.
Shirley refused the money.
But the husband took
took the money. And so, like, you know, then there's this, like, unraveling of like what money and security can do to people, especially when you grew up in such uncertain
circumstances. Yeah. Or it creates that poverty mindset that, you know, and that also was his inability to create a lineage for himself, that fear. I think that it wasn't just about he's going to pass down mental illness. I think that it was more of things he had to take care of as well. I think having that fear mindset of, you know, can kind of prevent you from wanting to have that in your life, having children in your life. So I thought that was very interesting.
Definitely, like, you know, he had that fear of passing it on, so he refused.
Yeah.
But didn't tell his wife, you know, so there was this whole...
It was a lie.
Yeah, there were a bunch of lies, and him handling it in a not so
healthy way. Yeah.
But also, like, the psychology behind going through such traumatic things as children and feeling so uncertain and having to go live with an aunt for a while, like not having stability in childhood, can create a space where it's hard to accept security.
Security, yeah. And the fact the father never sat them down and had hard conversations. He believed in his mind he was protecting his children and protecting their thought process of their mother by not having discussions. And I kind of talk about this in previous episodes in my conversation with my daughter. Something that helped me a lot was having hard conversations. I mean, we cannot help what our children see, what they're a part of, but we can help the conversations we have after. And if we turn it into lessons, they then feel that we trust them, and then they trust us, and then they have communication. You know, all the while, Stephen was seeing things and never told anyone. And I think it comes from not feeling safe enough to say what the obvious was, that something was happening.
But if you look at it too, like, the father didn't talk to them to protect them. So Stephen felt like, well, I'm the oldest, so I also can't say anything to protect them.
That's right.
And I have to see them as crazy. And, you know, he kind of spun that in his own mind.
Absolutely. Well, then you have Shirley, who is the eldest daughter, but the second in line, and we believe she represents the anger. She lashes out when she feels that she's not being listened to or seen, and that kind of shows in her relationship later on in life. It kind of shows with having to be the matriarch or the another mother to the children. So she suppresses a lot of that. And I know you and I have talked a lot about what suppression of anger happens. It manifests in other things. I think she was in so many ways, she was in denial of a lot of things as well. So it's like, even though each of these characters represent an aspect of grief, they all experience all of them as well.
Well, and what I think is actually interesting is, you know, there is the order in which you are supposed to go through the stages of grief. And what I felt like I noticed was that, like, Stephen really only felt like denial, but Shirley felt like anger and denial. And then Theo was bargaining, but she felt like she was bargaining, but also had the anger and denial.
And very much anger.
Right. And so, like, they, and all the way down to Nellie, who was acceptance, like, it felt like she had all of them.
All of them, yeah.
So, you know, it kind of felt like even though they were in oldest to youngest order, felt like the youngest had actually gone through all of the stages, whereas the oldest had not. They were a little more set in their ways.
Kind of set in their ways because he was the oldest, yeah.
Right, and he felt like he had to. And so when it came to Shirley, I found it so fascinating that she became a mortician and helped children specifically walk down and take that final look of the person who they lost, because she had somebody do that for her.
Yes.
And she wanted to give back. And so they basically live in the space that all of this happens, and it becomes basically her whole life. But she starts giving people discounts and deals and starts bending over backwards to help people who have been through what she's been through.
That's right. And how sometimes that suppression can become resentment, right?
Right, and especially with the husband, because they were losing out on money by helping people that, you know, it was a nice thing she was doing, but maybe they shouldn't have been doing it.
Right.
And so, yeah, there was this aspect of, like, the husband feeling frustrated that they're not making money because she's trying to do what's right or what's best or helpful to these people. Which is very kind, but not very business-oriented, business-like. So that was kind of what pushed the husband to take some of the hush money behind her back. And so...
and even thinking about her, which had to be very hard, her getting her sister ready for the viewing.
For sure.
And how when I saw that, I just saw suppression. I saw her pushing it down in a place that where she just couldn't feel.
Yeah.
And it to me, although, you know, there were moments of her breaking down, she just shoved it down. And she just shoved it down. And to her, it was just her getting her sister ready.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of strength, but I think a part of her wouldn't allow herself to feel.
Yeah.
And that's why when some of the betrayals happened with her middle sister, she lashed out. And, you know, and she had a right to be angry, but I think it took her, I think one of the things that was kind of frustrating for me is when her and Theo had it out and she finally listened to Theo. I wish that would have happened a little bit earlier because it was just like, you know, you can almost relate with both characters. You relate with Theo, feeling like she just wants to feel, and I know I'm kind of jumping ahead right now with that. Yeah. But then you also relate with this sister who feels like she has given everything.
Yeah.
Everything to everyone, sacrificing herself, not feeling, and here she is betrayed. But I think that's what happens when you don't confront things as you need. It can create this kind of resentment within yourself of this self-sacrificial lamb.
Right. Right.
You know?
Well, and anger often manifests the most when you're not, like, experiencing other emotions. So there's this aspect of, like, you know, if you're not letting yourself feel, period, then yes, of course it's gonna manifest as emotional outbreaks, which is going to come out as anger.
Yes.
Whereas if you're feeling all of your emotions equally, then, like, you're still gonna have anger, but on lesser scales.
Yes.
Because you're still experiencing sadness and happiness and all of those other...
The release of it.
The releases, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it's always, especially for me, because we've talked about this before, it's about the release. You know, I think sometimes when you are in a position, you don't give yourself permission to feel certain things. So if you are the mother of the family, you know, you've kind of got to grin and bear it and just do things. If you're running a company, You can't sit in your feelings. You have to just go ahead and do it. I think when you are in a position, and you have to think where she would have been in the position of the family, she would have been the eldest sister.
Right.
So she wasn't giving herself permission to feel it because she can't.
Right.
'Cause she knows better, and that she, But that also manifests in judgment.
Right.
Because there was a lot of judgment. She
Right.
found out her sister was gay.
Right.
And, there's that point of the wedding where they're kind of looking at her realizing that her sister is gay.
Yeah.
And then this rigidness that you almost feel from Shirley. But I kind of connect to her on so many different levels when it comes to that.
Well, and it almost felt like a lot of that anger, too, was like, why didn't you tell me?
Yes.
And there was this, you... Do you not trust me?
Yes. She had that with Nell, too. She felt like, why didn't Nell come to me and tell me, know? And I think, especially when it comes to that, when we feel these feelings of, why didn't this person come in and kind of talk to me? It's never about us.
Right.
It's always about that other person.
Yeah. And
what I think maybe the other siblings didn't really feel safe.
Right.
When it came to that.
Yeah.
I think this is a good point to take a little bit of a break and kind of think about so far what we've talked about and the areas of grief. We're going to pick back up on the next episode of with the rest of the siblings, and then kind of talking about some of the ways that we have confronted our grief and loss. So thank you guys so much. We will see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Shh, Your Ancestors Are Speaking. Subscribe to the channel and click the follow button. For updates on current events, follow Smootyfox on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned, wear a hat, sometimes play chess. And when I'm out, I'm